So one morning, a pastor noticed little Alex staring up at the large plaque that hung in the foyer of the church. And on this plaque were lots and lots of names, and on either side of the plaque were two American flags. So the 7-year-old had been staring at this for a really, really long time. So the pastor walked up quietly and said, "Good morning, Alex." And Alex says, "Good morning, Pastor," still focused on the plaque. So Pastor McGuire, Alex said, "What is this?" And the pastor explained that it was a memorial to all of the men and women who had died in service. So Alex, still staring at this plaque, just looks at him and says, "Well, which one, the 8:45 or 10:30? Laughter yoga. So, hi. Good morning. Thank you for coming out this morning. It's always a pleasure to come up and be with you and see you, and we'll see about inspiring, educating, and empowering. We'll see. That's really for you to say, that's just my intention, but we'll see how we do. Thank you for the music that goes with today's talk, because I want to talk to you about time. For those of you who have met me before and know me, you know that my particular little bent in ministry is that our coming here matters. That we apply these principles, that we teach, that we practice, that it should show up in our life. And if it doesn't show up in our life, if it doesn't show up as peace of mind or happiness or health, then really what's the point, right? Because we live in a very joyful theology where we study and practice that our minds and our attitudes and our beliefs are actually creative energies that go before us to pave the way into a life of power, poise, and confidence. So Eric Butterworth says that when the ties that bind the mind are broken and a person is introduced to his real self that has no limitations, the bells of heaven ring for joy. So we're here to break the ties that bind us today, especially around the area of time. Now, it is true that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and we all landed in a family somewhere, in a human family somewhere. So even though it's true we're spiritual beings, it's also equally as true that we're human beings. And when we landed in this family somewhere, we landed in a family and in a culture, in an environment that taught us everything we could possibly know to live this human life. Now, that's all of our beliefs, all of what we think is right and wrong, all of what we think is good and bad, all of what we think the world is, all of what we think the world is not, all of our behaviors. Do you know what I'm talking about? Now, in my family, though it wasn't, many have had a very worse childhood than I had, and many have had a much better childhood than I have had, but it doesn't really matter. But I wasn't really taught these ideas, right? Nobody really talked to me about inclusivity and oneness and wholeness and unconditional love and the power of forgiveness and the joy of abundant living and abundant thinking. Right, I had to learn that somewhere else down the line. Well, probably most of you as well. We also, when we came into this existence, we learned about, we have this thing called race consciousness or collective consciousness, which contains universal ideas. One of the universal ideas that we learned about is time. You know, we also learned the world is round. We learned many, many things that could be many, many other sermons. But we learned about time. So in truth, capital T, in God's world, there is no time. God did not invent time. God did not invent borders between countries, right? That's all our doing. We did all of those things. In the now, in God's world, there's only now. You know, I've spent many, 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 many hours and hours and hours in the African bush. And I've experienced there the same thing you might experience if you sat under an oak tree. That in in the African bush where antelope are munching and elephants are drinking and lions are sleeping mostly 20 hours a day, right? There's no time. None. You actually have no awareness on time. There's no awareness of the schedule you're not completing or the past that you're dragging around with you, like this, or the future. So today, from a metaphysical perspective, I wanted to talk about something really, really important in relationship to time, that if we can embrace it, will shift things for you and for me. It shifts things. Now, before I do that, I want to presence, I'm not a very big Bible scholar, that in our faith tradition, we don't study the Bible as much as other pastors, preachers, priests might study the Bible. So I don't consider myself a Bible scholar because we truly skimmed over it. We mostly study things like philosophy and quantum physics. But in the Bible, in Luke, there's this saying that goes, "No one having put his hand to the plow and looking back is fit for the kingdom of heaven." And what that means to me within the context of this talk this morning is that when you're plowing, so the plow represents what? Preparing the field to plant, right? So it's preparing the field to plant a new crop for a new season, for a new year of eating, right? Whether it's corn or beans or peas, or it doesn't really matter. And that planting is a forward-thinking, forward-looking activity. So what this saying is saying, it's intelligent. What the saying is saying is that you can't look to last year's crop. You cannot look to what happened before this moment of planting new seeds, because the kingdom of heaven, this thing that's promised to us, is a now phenomenon. It's not in the past. It's right this moment. And to the degree that we are back there, thinking about, regretting, we have all kinds of time sayings about that, right? The good old days. I don't know. We have a tendency to spend a lot of time back there. But spending a lot of time back there keeps us from what's happening right here. And right now is peace. Right here. Only right here. In this now moment. There's another activity in the Bible that has to do with time, which is Lot's wife turning to salt. Do you all remember that one? That God came down to to the family and said, you have to leave the city of Sodom and move. You have to go someplace else, because God was going to kill all the people in Sodom, which is not really relevant to the story. But because it was anchored in the human, right? There were things going on there that was a place where people were paying attention to the circumstances, conditions, and activities of being human, and not paying attention to the things of a spiritual nature. So Lot's family, he said, go move to a better place because this place is going away. Well, as they're walking, Lot's wife turns around to look back, which symbolizes looking back to her past, and she turns into a pillar of salt. She calcifies. So similar to what the past effects could be for us, to getting stuck, right? To getting settled into a life that is not a life of possibility. So I wanted to talk today about the nature of the past, present, and future. Everybody get that? We have that. We have the past, we have the present, and we have the future. And I believe that there are two ways of living. Two. One is a life that is predictable, and one that is a life that is possible. Predictable life or a possible life. Now, whether you are more on the predictable side or more on the possible side has a direct relationship to how you interact with this thing that we call time, past, present, and future. So we have I want to tie these together a little bit. You have past, present, future, but for today, let's look at past and present and future and present as phenomenons. So we're going to link them. Past and present, future and present. So the standard operating procedure for most human beings everywhere, all of us really, the standard operating procedure is that from our past, it's really cold in here. No, you don't have to do anything. I'm just like when I did a wedding once outside in North Carolina in December. Oh my God. You know how hard it is to do wedding vows when your teeth are going blah, 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 blah. So the standard operating procedure is that when something happens to us, we make decisions about it. We evaluate it. We assess it. We come to conclusions about it. We make decisions about it. Are you with me? What that might look like? And we do it from the moment we're born. In fact, we do it all the time. But as we become conscious, we can manage that. But most of the decisions we've made about life, most of the conclusions we've come to, most of the decisions we've made about ourselves were made when we were young. And what happens is all of that gets projected into our future. So the idea, if you joined the choir when you were 6 and your choir teacher said, "Oh, Ralph, you just cannot sing. Find something else to do with your time," right? A decision could be made that I'm not a good singer, it was embarrassing, you got shamed, and you never sang again, right? That actually then became projected into your future that if you sing, it's not going to be good news for you. It can also go the other way, that you cook a dinner that everyone loved your dinner, and you decide that, wow, that's a really great meal to fix for people when I'm trying to impress somebody, and that goes on your list of things to do again in the future. So we have in our lives this whole list of things we're never going to do again, and this whole list of things that we are going to repeat over and over again. Yes, it's natural for us to learn from our experience and come to some conclusions and decisions and begin to project those out into our future, which then determine how we are today. So, let's do another one, which is really common, especially in the area of relationships. So let's say that you got hurt in a relationship, right? And as a result of getting hurt, you got divorced or left or cheated on or abandoned. That could be parents, it could be a lover, a husband, a wife, and our heart closes. And we decide from this moment forward, we're never going to open it that much again. Right? This is very common stuff. It's part of being human, this thing that we do. Now, the problem with this past future orientation is, one, there is no present moment. So we're not really ever really present because the future is boomeranging back on us. Meaning that if we decide that we're never going to open our heart again, that is a future projection that will determine how you show up today. So if you're a person who's never going to do that again, when you get invited to a singles party, how you behave at that singles party is going to be a function of that decision, right? There will be no freedom of movement there. Are you guys with me? This is deep metaphysics here. There'll be no freedom of movement. You will be bound by this future projection out of your past that you have made. That is what I would call a predictable life. So a predictable life is a life that is going to happen based on past evidence. And it's not who we are here, right? Who we are beings. By what I mean by here, I mean all people everywhere, but certainly in this room, we come here to practice change your thinking, change your life. We come here to practice living a created life, not a predictable life. So, and another aspect of this as well is that because kind of the way we're wired is to pay more attention to the things that didn't work than the things that did, more attention to the things, our fear and our worry and our doubt, than to our celebration, to the things that worked, our future projections can be tend to be more negative expectation rather than positive expectation. Let me give you a couple of examples of what I mean by that. I remember one time I was a human resources person, and I had a young woman in the company I was working for come to me after lunch sobbing. She was just sobbing. She was inconsolable. This was in Los Angeles. And so we talked, and I says, like, what, Sue, what's going on? What's going on? So she proceeds to tell me about, she was driving on the 405 freeway. Do any of you know the 405 freeway in Los Angeles? Well, it's a very busy, way busy. It's like the 75 on steroids. So she's driving, and she had seen this German Shepherd at the side of the road. And I said, was it hit by a car? No. It's like, oh, why are you crying? Well, it's going to get hit by a car. To which I actually chuckled a little bit. And I said, Sue, if you have to make up something you like. Why don't you make up that a farmer from Encino was driving by, and he stopped and picked that dog up and took it back to his ranch where there was a female shepherd whose mate had just died, and they lived happily ever after. Why don't you make that up, right? Or recently, I have a younger sister who is on this. She joined me in doing this physical cleanse. Pretty harsh, right? Like no alcohol, no coffee, no weed, no sugar for 2 or 3 weeks. And it was very successful for her. She's feeling great. Her sinuses cleared up. She's lost some weight. And I was talking to her the other day, and she's feeling anxious and sad. It's like, why are you feeling anxious and sad? Well, I just know the minute I go off this diet, I'm going to gain it all back. It's like, right. So that's like, I call this awfulizing the future, like projecting out into what's going to happen, the worst case scenario. And it's what we do. It's like, you have to watch it in yourself, right? Watch it in yourself. Watch what you're thinking, because right there, it's like, right. So practical metaphysics is right there when that thought comes up. That's where creation happens. So if you're not awake, like you have to stand guard at the doorway, the portal of your own mind, because the past has a way of just regurgitating itself into your awareness. And we have the power, I like to say that spirit trumps the ego, so we have the power to catch it right there, negate it, turn it around, cancel it, think a new thought, replace it with something more positive and affirmative. We have all kinds of sayings about this. So when something good happens, what do people say? Oh, yes, but... It can't last. Wait till the other shoe drops. Nothing good ever happens to me. I always get terrible bosses. I mean, these are all creative declarations that move out into your future and determine what's going to happen between now and then. Because the past is over. So we're only talking about what's going to happen in your life between now and then. Between here and there. So we want to change this orientation. I want it to invite you, that we want to begin to look from future to present rather than past to present or past to future. Now, in order to do this, what's the first thing we have to do? The very first thing. It's the very first thing we have to do anyway, that when we choose to grow spiritually, when we choose to do something about our evidence-based life. And by the way, This is not easy what I'm saying to you. And here's why it's not. Because it takes 20 seconds of insane courage to do something different. Our stories are evidence. The circumstances and conditions are the narrative to why we are the way we are. Right? That we would say I am a product of my environment. So if I don't have a happy life, I'm going to have lots of reasons why I don't have a happy life. Good reasons, right? I mean, you wouldn't believe what happened to me when I was 7. You wouldn't believe my first marriage. I'm not talking about me. I'm just talking about what we say, right? That I could have a great relationship if my parents didn't divorce when I was 8 and ruin my life, right? Or I could be happy and healthy today if it weren't for the diagnosis. Or all the women in my family have had breast cancer. So we have stories, and these stories give us, in some way, kind of keep us bound and limited and predictable. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But in my book, why not live extraordinary? Why not live amazing? Why not live adventuresome? Why not live a life that is bodaciously authentic and pleasing to you? Right? Why be bound by the past? It's not necessary. It's not, you must live a life according to how life was when you were 6. There's only now. There is no past. There is no past. So when you take this 20 seconds of insane courage and give up your story, just give it up, right? There's only 7 stories anyway. The whole world, 7 stories. Abandonment, abuse, right? I don't know. I don't have to name the 7. I'm being funny. You guys are very serious. But the point being is that your story is, there's another billion people who have your exact same story, right? Everyone has a story. And everyone's story to some degree is how hard it is, lack, limitation, doubt, it just is the nature of being human. But we are here. We're here again. We're here in this philosophy, faith, and way of life to transcend, to be in the world but not of the world, right? To be fully human here, but not to be negatively impacted by the circumstances and conditions of the world. You know, God is not negatively impacted by politics. God is not negatively impacted by the summer. God is not negatively impacted by, I'm pretty sure, we teach the God within, but I'm pretty sure if there is a God without somewhere, that she is looking at the earth in its totality, confused as heck, going, I gave you the power to do anything. Why are you doing that? Right? And all you have to do is turn on the news for 5 minutes and see what people do to people, what people do to the earth, what people do to animals, to know that we are crazy people. That the story that we tell that justifies our behavior or justifies our sadness or justifies our guilt is of no interest to God. That we are here to 20 seconds of insane courage to declare, to proclaim, to announce, to, what are other words? Call forth. That we have been fashioned in the image and likeness of whatever we want to call the something that created the African bush, whatever created the earth, whatever created sunrises and sunsets, whatever created the human body. Do you know how amazing the human body is? If you cut your finger, well, Reverend Emil Govro, do you guys know Reverend Emil? So, a longtime friend, he's the president of the board of the Open Path Retreat Center. We were at Agape together. He just had open heart surgery, double bypass. Within 30 days, healed, right? Healed. Cut your finger, and you don't have to do anything. You have to create the right conditions, but you could just watch it. You can just watch it knit all back together. The cells just do what they're supposed to do. Pretty soon you'll never know that's what God does. Right? We do the cutting, God does the healing. In life, right? So there isn't anything that we have done to ourselves, to the earth, to each other that cannot be cleaned up, cannot be blessed, cannot be healed by the presence. But we have to get out of the past. So 20 seconds of insane courage and you can leap into a created future. Now, that could look like, Mary Morrissey. Do you know Mary Morrissey, the creator of the Prosperity Plus class? She does this part in her class where she talks about this past, future, present relationship. And she does it like this, very practical, that if you want to be an author, if you want to write a book, or if you want to become a nurse, or if you want to find a new job, if you want to find a new spouse or get rid of the spouse you have, or whatever it is that you want to be doing today, what that person would be doing today. So you can't use the past evidence to tell you whether or not you can have a happy life. Because your past evidence may tell you that you can't. Because remember, we have the book we wrote. I can't, really, my grandmother, I can't have a happy life because of the Depression. Really? I repudiate that idea, or any idea like it. Because the Depression was there. The Depression happened. It was a now experience. People did what they did in the Depression. But once it's past, it's past. Right? So 20 seconds of insane courage. Oh, Mary Morrissey. So she would say, if you, in this moment, from wherever you are, forget the past, forget whether you've ever written an essay before, whether you know how to write, or whether you've taken a writing class, or whether anything you're going to write is interesting, unimportant to God. From right where you are, simply declare yourself to be an author. I am an author. I am a person who's going to write books. Put that out there in your future, right? Put it right out there. I'm a future author. Then, tomorrow morning when you wake up, you get to ask yourself, well, what would an author do? Would that author turn on the TV, play the video game, and have a cigarette? I'm not judging cigarettes. That's rule number 10 in the book of ministry, never say things like that. But whatever, you get my point. No, but what would an author do? They would write, or they would think about writing, or they would take an online writing class, or they would, sharpen their pencils, right? They would begin to act like an author acts. It's no different with anything else. If you say, I've been a little lonely, but from this moment forward, 20 seconds of insane courage, I'm going to put myself out there and meet friends. What would that person do tomorrow? So that is how you shift that orientation from past into the present, from future into the present. If you do that, 10 years from now, your life will be different. If you don't do that, and you only live from what's come before, I'm pretty sure your life 10 years from now will be exactly the way it is today. Right? Because for something to change, we have to change. Now, and by the way, there's no grandiose thing here. You don't have to write a book, become president, go to the moon, make $1 million. You don't have to do any of those things. I think in some ways it would be equally as glorious to have 20 seconds of insane courage to stop being a people pleaser. 20 seconds of insane courage to be happy more than you're not happy. 20 seconds of insane courage to take on a hobby that you've been wanting to do for 5 years but been procrastinating. For whatever your reasons are. I had a teacher once when I was very young who said this to me, and I took it to heart, and it's been one of my mantras in life. You either have the results or you have all the reasons why you don't. So we don't want the reasons why we haven't written that book that lives inside of us. So Steve Zaffron is a Landmark Forum leader. Do you guys know what the Landmark Forum is? I don't know if it really matters, but he's a Landmark Forum leader. It's like a weekend experiential thing you can do. And the Landmark Forum leaders have written a book called Insights and Distinctions, Conversations That Matter. And you can get it on Amazon. There's 2 of them, and they're my bathroom books. Well, that's way too much information as well. Okay. Anyway, he's got this quote, and he says, "Possibility is not real at its origin. It is something we create as real and then stand for as a reality." Let me say it again. We'll unpack it a little bit. So possibility is not real at its origin. It's exactly what we're talking about here. It's like John F. Kennedy when he declared that a man would be on the moon within 10 years. We're going to put a man on the moon in 10 years. That was not real at the moment he said it. And it wasn't actually even possible the moment he said it. There wasn't the fuel, there wasn't the spaceship, there wasn't the will, there wasn't the money. He actually did what I'm talking about here is he created a context. He created the environment for which something unknown could happen. And then he stood by it. He committed to it. He declared it into existence. Possibility is not real at its origin. So you're being an author. You're having a new career. You're taking that trip to the Bahamas. Well, not the Bahamas. You're taking that trip to that river cruise, right? You're going to Africa. Isn't real the moment you say it, right? It could be like, oh, that makes me so uncomfortable, but still living in your heart. So possibility is not real at its origin. It is something we create as real because God made us as creators. That's what we teach here. We create with our word. We speak things into existence. Let there be light. Let there be a book. Let there be a relationship. Let there be happiness, right? It's 20 seconds of insane courage. Was that my time? Time? Oh. Okay. So, it might work. You might say it something like this: from this moment forward, I will be more loving. From this moment forward, I will be more forgiving. From this moment forward, I will let the past be the past. I'm not going there anymore. Here's a good one for you. 20 seconds of insane courage. From this moment forward, I will never tell my story again. Do you know how big that is for some people? Maybe not anybody here. Do any of you have in your family or close circle of friends somebody whom I'm talking about who tells you their story? Every time you see them, they tell you why they're so miserable? No? Because I have some still. I don't spend a lot of time with them, but I do have some. So, one of the fundamental ideas here that we embrace, which is so freeing in my mind, because I don't know how many of you come from traditional religions, but this idea of heaven and hell being real estate, like there is a heaven that's joyous and there is a hell that's not, as pieces of real estate, and this idea that our whole human incarnation is for the purpose of getting to one of those two places, but that during the beginning and the end we are judged, restricted, guilted. That whole idea is a crazy idea. That we have been made to celebrate life. We have been made to joyously express our authentic self, give away our gifts and talents. So heaven is something that happens within us, or hell. Right? That we, through our state of consciousness, we are either experiencing peace and love, inclusivity, vitality, or we're not. And what we're talking about today, what I'm telling you today, is to let the past be where it is. You can't fix it or change it. And probably, metaphysically speaking, the deepest spiritual truth is, there's a Cherokee proverb that says, "Don't leave a thing until it blesses you." So there's something about our past that can be a blessing if we open to the blessing, right? Don't work too hard at it. But if you just get that, there's a mantra you can take. I'll give you a mantra to take from this moment forward for the rest of your life, which is, everything that happens to me happens for me. Everything that happens to me happens for me. That everything that goes on has somewhere in it a seed of blessing for you, because you are a powerful spiritual being here co-creating your life with the infinite. So I'll close with a quote from Charles Fillmore. And he says, "Life for each of us should be a journey into jubilation." And so it is. All right. I'm going to pray. Do you not normally pray after? Well, we're praying today. I don't care what anybody else does. So join with me as we turn within for a moment. And as we turn within, this is an amazing symbolic gesture of leaving the world and all of its circumstances and people and places and things right out there in the world. We close our outer eyes so that we can open our inner eyes, so that we can gaze into the space and place and dimension within us that truly is whole and perfect and complete. Nothing broken, nothing missing, nothing absent. That there is nothing in the world that we can find that isn't already inside. And so as we make this dimension of ourselves welcomed in our awareness, knowing that we don't pray to find God, we pray to align ourselves with good. We pray to align ourselves with the truth of our being. That right here and right now there is a power and a presence, an infinite something that out of which we got created. We did not make ourselves. And that this presence, whatever it means to you, is the Alpha and the Omega, the center and the circumference, the all and all. No spot where God is not. And so I know and affirm in this moment that I am that. You are that. We are the beloved in whom God is well pleased. I and this Mother, Father, God presence, whatever it is one thing. And so as we are leaves on the same tree, grains of sand on the same beach, that we are connected to each other. We are connected to all animals everywhere. We are connected to all things animate and inanimate. And that we are connected to the saint and the sinner. In God's eyes, we are all one. All its beloved. And so it is from that place that I just simply speak a word for and about each person here today to call forth 20 seconds of insane courage. To call forth this powerful declaration to live in unlimited possibility, to live in a created life, to live in to architect that which pleases us, that which receives our gifts and talents, that which reflects back to us our beauty and our warmth and our kindness, because truly that is the seed of divinity within each and every human being who chose to have a carnation on this earth together. And so I join with you in consciousness to make peace with the past. I join with you in consciousness to forgive all of those who knew not what they did. I join with all of you to heal any negative impact of anything that was said to you or done to you, the negative impact of anything that you have ever said or done to another, to simply know that as we stand in this moment, this never-before moment, that what we do here, what we say here, what we think here, how we feel here, moves out from us to create a future that we will love. And so I'm grateful for the power and the ability we have, knowing that God is real, knowing that we are real, and that we have the ability in every given moment to change our mind. And so I release this word into the law, knowing that the law, this universe, only has a resounding yes to the word. And so with conviction, we accept and expect it to fulfill. And I ask you to join with me in knowing this for yourself by saying, and so it is. Thank you.